Hello, my loves, and welcome or welcome back. I'm Abby, and it's been a little while. I didn't mean to take such a long break. I was just finding it really hard to fit in when to film and what to film, and we were getting busy with some projects on. And before you know it, I haven't done anything for like 3 months. So we have 3 months worth of books to talk about. So we are gonna go through my May, June, and July wrap up. I hate that the year's going so quick, but I'm also kind of excited for the end of summer and to get a little bit more back into cozy season. I think part of why I haven't really been making content is because I also feel like I haven't been on it with my reading at the moment. I'm finding it really hard to kind of sit and focus on my books, even if I'm reading on my iPad. So I finished a few audiobooks recently, but I feel like even then I've not been like doing a lot and binging them, and I've gotten out of the habit of putting my headphones on and listening to my books while I'm doing, my chores or cooking or getting ready. I really want to get back into the habit of that. Hopefully by coming back talking about books a bit more will give me the motivation to want to revolve my time around books again and reading and consuming instead of buying. I've also got a book haul coming up because I'm buying books a lot quicker than I can read them. So in May, I finished 5 books. In June, I finished 4, and I think in July I finished 4 as well. Wait, how many is that? 13. So that's 13 books since we've last spoken. And I'm going to just go through them in order that I've read them. Gosh, I feel like because all of these were so long ago, who knows what I even remember or what I have to say about any of these. Okay, so at the end of April, I was still reading and finishing off Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. And you know what's interesting coming back and speaking about this now is me and my partner have just watched the Normal People adaptation, and he'd never seen it before. I have watched and loved it, and the ending still breaks my heart, both in the book and in the show. But I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed getting back into Sally Rooney's writing. I think because I haven't read anything like this for so long, it was a little bit dense to get through, but towards the end of it, I actually really cared about these characters, and I loved how you were so inside their heads, but both brothers were so different. This is about 2 brothers who are very different from each other. Peter is older and he's a lawyer and kind of on the surface has this very successfful life, but underneath that there's a lot going on and he doesn't exactly feel very stable. And then on the other hand is Ivan, who is 8 years younger, socially awkward, a loner, and he's also a competitive chess player. My dad is on the committee for a local chess club who do so much for the community, so much for the juniors. So it was also interesting reading this, having some more chess knowledge and understanding, even though obviously it's not like a deep dive into chess and competitive chess and exactly like, all the moves of the game and everything. But it was really interesting reading that analytical brain and, just his focus on it. I was like, oh, I actually understand this a lot more, even though I don't play chess myself. I do feel like this was a little bit too long. I think it could have been cut down a lot. For some of it, it was a little bit on the dense side. Let's see if I wrote anything interesting. I didn't really say anything negative about it. I think it just didn't hit the same. This cover gets so dirty just because it's got like the matte effect on it. Yeah, I basically put, I really enjoyed these characters, but I can't imagine anything being Normal People because Normal People hit me so hard. I feel like I might reread that soon. Maybe I'm going to do a few rereads, even though I want to get to all the new books on my shelf. But I gave this a 3.75. I enjoyed it, but I think you need to really enjoy what is essentially just a character study, which is what Sally Rooney's writing is. And her writing style of no quotation marks and very much in your character's head, and Peter's point of view, I feel like is a lot more stream of consciousness. So if you like that, you might like this, but understand that it is a little bit on the dense side. So that was the first book I finished in May. I literally finished that off on the 1st of May. Oh, then I listened to Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross, which is the sequel to Divine Rivals. I listened to both of them on audio, and you know what? They're just like a fun, cute time. I really enjoyed the World War era, but with it being a more magical battle without them necessarily having magical powers. I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember a lot of the specifics of this. I do remember thinking that some of the romance happens really quickly, but I don't remember specifically if that happens in this book or it might have been the first one. Literally having to reread my reviews for everything. But that it picked up and felt a lot more action-packed than the first book. Just feel like it could have had more world building and more understanding of these gods and this magic, but I do know that there is another book in the same world which I think is about those gods or divine, and I did just pick that up in the Kindle 99p deal literally this month because I was like, oh, I might as well get that and read that. But I gave Ruthless Vows a 4 stars, but I think thinking back it was probably a 3-star series overall, but like a 4-star for enjoying it in the moment at the time. And I do think the narration was really good on both books. Really well done. Just a nice little book. Looking back, I think May was actually a pretty great reading month because next I finished what is probably my favourite book that I've read this whole year. That is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I had a feeling that I was going to love this. I really loved The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I also really enjoyed Daisy Jones and the Six. I kind of knew from those two, because I love her characters and how real they feel and how you really feel the emotions they feel, that I was going to love this. And I was also scared because this is a sapphic story about an astronaut, 2 astronauts, and I don't want to give anything away. Let's see what it says. Yeah, so it's also set in the 80s. Oh, okay, so they're all like preparing for their first missions, but on one particular mission, everything changes in an instant. So if you don't know what goes on in this, if you haven't read this, all I will say is if you love characters and love and getting your heart wrenched out, then you will probably enjoy this, especially if you've also read anything else by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I gave this a 5 stars and I literally can't stop thinking about it. I've had a few 5-star reads this year, but I don't think anything tops Atmosphere. Let's just double check what I wrote on my review. I just checked my Storygraph review as well, and literally all it says is I can't even begin to describe how beautiful this book is inside and out, because this cover is gorgeous. And I also got this in a charity shop literally for £1, so that is probably the best £1 I have spent this entire year. There's also only one more physical read. I've been really bad with getting through my physical books in the last few months. I've only finished 3 physical reads. The rest have all been either on my iPad or audiobook form. Let's see what's next. Okay, an audiobook. You know what? I feel like everyone was hyping this up, but I forgot I'd even read it. So that clearly says a lot about what I actually thought of it, that it's not stayed with me. But I read Weaving Shore by Heba al-Wasiti. I just heard so many people talking about this. It's kind of giving like Victorian, I don't want to say gothic. I mean, it kind of is gothic. I don't think it's like a dark academia. It's the first in a trilogy and it follows a girl who can see the dead. She can see ghosts. But honestly, I actually feel like I can't even tell you much more than that. There's like this big manor house that they have to go to. I don't really remember it enough to even talk about it. I gave it a 3.5 stars at the time, but I think I'm actually going to lower that. Let's edit this. I think I'm going to lower that just to a 3 because I literally do not remember what happened in it. I remember thinking that it felt quite slow. I listened to this as well, if I didn't say, on audio. I'll definitely be continuing the series as it comes out, but I actually don't know if I will. I think I'm gonna have to wait and see what I hear about it. Honestly, I just found this so forgettable. I said the romance element was fine, didn't really vibe with that at all. It felt quite unnecessary, but that I did like the plot. But at the same time, can I describe to you exactly what the plot is? Not that I'm the best at describing things anyway, but the answer is no. So that one is now a 3-star, and we'll just move on from that. Then after that, I clearly just wanted something that was a little bit fun. I read the next in the Dream Harbour series, which was the Strawberry Patch Pancake House. This one was super cute. Again, they're all just lovely reads. Some of them I feel like hit you more than others depending what your personal experiences have been or what characters and tropes you enjoy reading about the most. But this was really sweet. It was a chef who's had to move back to Dream Harbour because the mother of his child that he didn't know about passed away. So he's gone to look after the kid and he gets together with one of the girls there. It was just really nice, really sweet. I gave it a 3.25. Let's just see if I put anything in particular about it. Literally, I just put cute but didn't feel that special to me. Sometimes that's all you need to say. Enjoyable, but not the best. That was the last book that I finished in May. So that's the 5 books. That was the 5 books that I read in May. So then we're going on to the 4 books that I read in June. The first one I listened to, I've actually had this on my Audible for so long. And I've had this on my radar for so long as well, because I'm sure it was, oh, there we go. It was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2021. So I've known about it since then and had it on my radar to read since then. And maybe this was in one of those Audible 2-for-1 deals, but I read Detransition Baby by Tori Peters with, oh, it's got the narrator's name. I was so confused. I was like, wait, I didn't think this was written by 2 people. I thought the narration for this was good. I like that it challenged the level of what you think and kind of, I don't like using the word woke, but this is about some trans characters, but one has detransitioned back to being a man and has then since gotten someone pregnant. Instead of just kind of feeling like the two of them together can raise this child and he can be the dad, he then has to let this woman know that he wasn't always a man, and then goes back to his ex-partner to try and get her involved because she's always wanted a baby. And it's this whole kind of mix of the 3 of these people trying to navigate what they want from motherhood, parenthood, life, love, but they're such flawed characters, like they actually felt really real. The one thing that I did point out with this was, I'm going to read it from my review. I found Reese unlikable throughout, even while understanding their struggles, but I do always find unlikable characters interesting as long as they have layers to them, which Reese and the other characters definitely did. And I think that is the really great selling point to this book, is the characters have so much depth and it really makes you feel for them and the situation, and you don't need to, you know, have had a lived experience to have empathy and understand what these characters are going through. I love an ending where that chapter in all these people's lives just end and you don't have everything wrapped up to, like, you know, the end of their life or whatever. You don't actually know what's going to happen next. And that happened with this. And I just thought it was a great read. It was really well narrated. I gave it 4 stars. I would definitely recommend it, especially if you want to read more LGBTQIA plus, kind of make sure I don't forget any of the letters, reads. But yeah, definitely recommend that. It was great. And then again, I finished another audiobook, and this one I've been looking forward to for ages. I think I got it on some sort of deal, or maybe I made a different Audible account when they had like a really good starting deal just on my other email. But that is The Lady of the Lake by Jean Menzies, who is a YouTuber that I have been watching for years. I feel like she's kind of one of the classic booktubers, like UK booktubers before booktube and romantasy and that sort of space got really big and popular. Like, I've been watching Jean for years, so when she was coming out with a fiction book, I was so intrigued. And now I've never watched the show Merlin, but I know that people that watch Merlin have like a deep-rooted connection to this show, and this is clearly where the inspiration for this came from. It is a sapphic story of Lady Vivian as she travels and leaves her home to go to Camelot, and she becomes friends with Morgan and Arthur and who's the other girl? Gwyn? Is it Gwen or Gwyn? And it's an adventure within that. And I loved how the magic was portrayed. I loved how Merlin was portrayed. I thought that was really interesting, that he wasn't just this old wise man who was just there to help. Like, he was his own flawed character. And the romance was so lovely. And I really enjoyed this whole story. I gave it 4 stars. What did I put in my review? Some of my reviews are literally so basic. I literally just put, really loved the characters and the story they went through. Magical. Because it was magical. I loved that it was a fantasy, but a different style, and that it was medieval fantasy. I loved it. It was great. I'm really excited to read more from Jean, because I know she's got some other books. I can't remember exactly how many she's got that are fiction versus non-fiction, because I know she's done a little bit of a mixture. I definitely need to read more from her. And if you like your kind of folklore and your myths, that strain of fantasy and that sort of more mythical and folklore based writing, then I think you'll really enjoy this. And and I'm excited to get through some more of her work eventually when maybe I've actually read more from my physical TBR, because it's literally embarrassing looking over at my shelves. There's so many stacks. So next I've got a physical read, and I've actually got an indie published book, which was so exciting. I picked this up at Fiction Fest, and this is Wrath of the Never Queen by Storm Lomax. Storm's stand was so fun. They literally had this big sign, like big banner above their stand that said something like female rage and romantasy, and I was like, you know what, I'm so here for it. And this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I really enjoyed the world that it was set in. It's kind of like this swampy marshland with like weird creatures and witchcraft. Shivani is chosen, let me read what this says. As it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, the prince has this kind of monstrous curse where he turns into this monster, but it's more unpredictable in this story. And every 6 months, the king summons a girl from the village to win the prince's heart to try and break his beastly curse, but no one has succeeded. Shivani gets sent off to the tower. Her dad gives her up, basically, because he's got a lot of debt to the crown. And at first, I found this really intriguing, really interesting. I liked the characters, but I feel like you could probably cut out a good 100 pages of this, and it is only 300 pages. There was a lot of kind of nothing that happened, and the main character not really doing anything. I can see the potential in the writing, but it did feel a little bit basic, and it didn't give me a whole picture of what was going on or what her intentions were a lot of the time. Let me just double check what my review was. Yeah, I wish there'd been more details, more world building, and some deeper relationships. I feel like a lot of the relationships in this were a little bit surface level, but I can only imagine as this author writes more that that's just gonna develop, and I am really excited to see what Storm comes out with next. I know they've got a book that they announced. I don't know when that's coming out though, I can't quite remember, which I think is set in the same world, just in a different city of it. The one thing that I found difficult about this is that she has 6 months to figure things out and try and break the curse, and she spends a lot of it just kind of doing nothing and just kind of accepting her life. Like, she's just kind of dawdling about and not really doing anything, and then suddenly it's like, oh my god, everything's gonna happen, I've got so little time left, and it's like, oh, you literally could have spent 2 months doing something instead of nothing. So I think that's the only part where I found it a little bit unbelievable that she wouldn't have focused on trying to get out or break the curse. But it was a nice little read, and I'm excited to see how this author grows. I think that's the nice thing about discovering indie authors and authors, you know, first works, is then you can really see the growth in their craft. And I think you can always tell when someone loves what they do and what they're writing, and you could really tell that with this. So thank you, Storm. This was lovely, and you know what, you can't go wrong with a pink cover anyway, can you? I think I forgot to say that I gave this 3.25 stars. It was really fun. And then again, I clearly just wanted something fun and fast, so I read another from the Dream Harbour series, and I read The Gingerbread Bakery. Now, I was anticipating this one for a while because obviously this one follows Annie and Mac, and their kind of love-hate relationship has been hinted at throughout the whole series, so I was really excited to finally get to their book and have it all explode and finally happen. And I loved how this was told. I loved that you got the past and what happened, and you finally saw their history while they were also going through the present day. I thought it was a really great way to tell the story. I think it's the first time I've read a second chance romance as well, but I think the way that this was done was so lovely because it wasn't through anything malicious. It was just that they weren't ready at that point in their lives, and then when they finally accept each other and work things out, it was great. It was so good. I gave this 5 stars purely because, you know, when a book is just like, yes, this is just perfect, I'm loving all the elements of this and the characters. This was a good one. Gorgeous, stunning. I just think it's a great little series. You know, if you just want a romance that you know is going to hit, you can count on a Dream Harbour. So that was the 4 that I finished in June, and then next we're going to go on to the 4 that I finished in July. 3 of them I finished in the first half of the month, and one I was reading for quite a while, and I probably should have DNF'd it, but we'll get to that. And then I finished an audiobook at the end of the month as well. So July, I feel like, was the slowest reading month for me. I really want to crack back on now. So the first book I finished in July was The Mermaid of Black Conch, and I listened to the audio for this. I think, again, it might have been on a deal or I got it cheap because I got quite a lot of audiobooks in one go because I either had a load of credits or they were are on like the 2 for, I always look out for the 2 for 1 deals. And the narration for this was so stunning. It was so beautiful. I don't know if the way this is written physically is in dialect, like if it's written in, you know, how they speak, but this is about a tiny Caribbean fishing village. It starts in 1976. A fisherman finds a mermaid, and then not long after, she gets captured and brought to shore, and she starts to turn back into a human, but she hasn't been a human for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. And it's the story of that and her connection with these people on the island. And this was just so beautiful and so well told. The characters were amazing. The way they connected to each other, and just her pain and why she was there and how she'd been cursed was so interesting. And how then, even though it's not necessarily a magical fantasy world, the curse follows her, but you never truly know exactly how she was cursed. This was also a bit of a dual narration, but for the most part it's David writing his diary and telling you what happened in the past. Some bits he kind of says how it's going to end up, but you don't get the full story until he's told you it all. This also I've known about for a while because it was nominated or won. I think it was was that the Women's Prize before it was just called the Women's Prize? I don't know, it has a Costa thing on this little picture here, but I've known about it since then. I've always thought it sounded interesting. So when I listened to the little sample of the audiobook, I was just sold, and I'm so glad that I read it. I gave this a 4 stars. I love that it was a mermaid without it being like a cute fantasy mermaid. It was like she was actually just a fish, if that makes sense. After that is another audiobook, and I listened to this because me and a group of my friends have started a book club where instead of picking a specific book, we pick a theme. And now I just couldn't wait because I needed to start a new audiobook anyway. And our theme was unreliable narrators. So I read Bunny by Mona Awad. I've been wanting to read Bunny for so long because I feel like it's one of the most well-known kind of like weird girl fiction books. But I won't lie, I kind of thought it would be weirder or more enjoyable. I struggle when there's an element of kind of fantasy or magic or something going on. I mean, even then you don't know what was real or what wasn't real. Some of it I was just kind of like, okay, but how is this actually happening? I was expecting for it to blow me out of the water and be weird and shocking, but it was just kind of, it was good, but it was just good, if that makes sense. I gave this a 3.75. I didn't write anything down. Maybe I wrote some notes on my phone because obviously this was for like a book club thing. Maybe I just didn't though. No, I literally haven't wrote any notes about this, which is a bit silly of me really. I think I enjoyed the build up to the middle and the shift in the narration and not kind of knowing what our main character Samantha actually felt or believed in, or if she was kind of being brainwashed in a way. But then when it kind of starts to dip back into like away from that middle point, I think that's when it lost me a little bit. I think I just didn't really care much for the ending. I think that ending went on for a long time and it could have been cut a bit shorter. So it was good, but I don't think I'd go on to read the next one because I don't see the point in there being a kind of sequel to this anyway. I think it's still worth a read, especially if maybe you're a bit newer to kind of weird girl or like more literary fiction in general. And it definitely hit the criteria of being a very unreliable narrator, which I do always find interesting, but it just kind of lost me a little bit towards the end. Next, I read an ARC. So thank you very much to NetGalley, which is where I found this and applied for it, and Verve Books, who are the publishers. I can't remember when this is coming out. Let's have a look on my NetGalley. I find NetGalley so difficult to actually, there we go, to actually just find all of your books on. So the ARC that I read is called Aftercare by Divya Maniar. This isn't being published until next year. I didn't realise that it wasn't being published until next year. I kind of forgot about that, to be honest. But this comes out February 27. And I thought this sounded really interesting. The cover drew me in. And also it's about an ex-reality TV star who is trying to live her life as an influencer, but because her relevance from that show is drying up, she's really struggling and she's kind of obsessed with herself and her views on social media and rewatching herself and judging herself. And then one night a man breaks into her apartment. This happens right at the beginning, it's not a spoiler. And also something tragic happens to someone that she was in the show with. And now based on that premise, I was like, this is gonna explore so many topics. It's gonna really go into, you know, the safety and how people can have obsessions and parasocial relationships. And then I feel like everything in the blurb and everything that happens right at the start of the book is then irrelevant towards the end. There's kind of like another trip element to the story, and I just feel like it meandered so much to even get to that point, and then from there until the end, I just found this so dense, and the characters were all so unlikable, but with not a lot redeeming them, and I just feel like there wasn't enough of a connection of them feeling like real enough people, and nothing was ever kind of resolved. And it got to the end, and I think I was just kind of thinking, what was the point? Which is so sad. And I gave it a 2.5 because I could see the potential, and I think there was some really interesting elements to this, but I just don't think that I would necessarily recommend it, and I think a lot could be cut down from it. I think it was too dense for what it was trying to do. Let's have a look at my review. I do think this had some important and interesting commentary on social media and parasocial relationships, but overall just found it didn't hit the mark. And if you want to read my full review, you can look at that on my story graph, which is linked down below. But yeah, thank you yet again to NetGalley for the arc, but unfortunately this one just didn't do it for me. Not every book can be for everyone. This did have some other really great reviews already, so maybe it was just me and not the book. And then finally, the final book of July, the final book of this 3-month wrap-up, which hopefully isn't too long, was Human Acts by Han Kang. So I want to make sure I don't get anything wrong in this because it's based on historical events that actually happened in South Korea. It doesn't say exactly what the event was, but there was some violent student uprisings and a boy is killed, and it's different stories from different characters that somehow come back to the story of this boy passing away. And it's all interconnected chapters that relate back to the massacres and this uprising and this boy passing away, and it was really powerfully told. It makes me want to reread The Vegetarian actually, because I read that years ago, and I think I would gain a lot more from it now, and that I would, I guess, understand it a lot more. Han Kang's writing, and especially with how it's translated by, where is she? With Deborah Smith, is just such an amazing combination, and I think this is something really great to get to. The narration, each chapter was told by a different narrator. One of them's actually Sandra Oh, which I love. I love that she was a part of it, but I would definitely check your trigger warnings for this. It's a fictionalized event story of a historical event, so it's not necessarily entirely factual, but it's all based on factual events. I definitely recommend this. I gave it a 4 stars. I just thought it was a really powerful story. There we go. That's everything. Not a lot of physical books. That's the thing that I need to focus on now. Not that I need to finish books really quickly. It's not a race, but I just want to get back into being able to get into my books and being consumed by it and wanting to read more. I've been on my phone and playing a lot of Colonist on my iPad recently because it's just something to brain rot to, and I think that's what I need to kick the habit of. I need to stop brain rotting so much and get back to reading, because that's what I really love doing. But thank you so much for bearing with me and for coming back if you've watched any of my other videos, and hopefully we will have another little chat soon. I'm gonna do a book haul next, so look out for that. Okay, bye my loves.